learning in progress. morning. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's online service. I'm the Reverend Sarah Lawal. It is my great honor to serve this beloved community. We're so glad you've joined us this morning. Happy Pride. Although Boise's Pride Weekend has been postponed until September, we honor Pride today during this month of June, which commemorates the early beginnings of Pride that grew out of the Stonewall Rebellion in New York City in June 1969. Pride celebrates the beautiful rainbow spectrum of sexual orientation and identity and gender identity, LGBTQIAA+, owning the pride instead of the shame of identity in the beautiful diversity of human beingness and expression. So it's fitting this morning that we connect our Pride service with our annual Flower Communion, along with our spiritual theme for the month of June, which is play. All three really great opportunities to think deeply about their spiritual connection. The beautiful flowers behind me, behind Sue Langley at our piano and on Jem's screen today, were thanks to all of you who came out yesterday for our in-person walk-up flower communion. Thank you so much for helping us create this beautiful rainbow display to celebrate the uniqueness and diversity of all of us. The flower communion ceremony was created by Unitarian minister Norbert Čapek for his church in Czechoslovakia in June of 1923. He had long felt the need for a ritual that would bring his people together, one that was inclusive and didn't alienate those who'd left other faith traditions. So he turned to the beauty of the landscape and invited his congregants to each bring a flower to represent the uniqueness and beauty of all who made up their church community. And by placing their own flowers in the vessels, thereby symbolizing the free will with which they joined in this community and others. The vases that contain the flowers symbolize the unity of our fellowship. And in honor of our spiritual theme of play, a theme that is often dismissed and ignored as frivolous, especially in some spiritual circles and religious circles, I invite you to play today. During the worship service even. We would be playing together were we in space here together, so give yourself permission to do so now. Dance to the music. You can turn your cameras off if you'd like. Sing along with the songs. Color, build something. And if that doesn't work for you, I invite you to think about one way that you will embody play before today is over. If you are a newcomer and you are worshiping with us for the first or second time, or you've been kind of lurking in our community here for a while, a special welcome to you. We know it takes a lot of courage to seek out a new community, especially during these times, and we're delighted that you've chosen us this morning. We invite you to fill out a newcomer form, which we'll post in the chat, so we can keep you connected with all of our communications that share all that is happening in our fellowship. And we continue to gather virtually in all kinds of ways, from meditation to yoga to coffee clatches and all kinds of other small group gatherings, all of which can be found on our website at boiseuu.org. We will continue gathering virtually throughout the summer, although we have opened up our indoor space for small groups of less than 10, and our 10 or less, and our outdoor space for groups of 50 or less. And you can book those spaces directly with the front office. You can contact Rachel or Nancy or look at our Gazette to figure out how to do that. As we, the board, the worship team, and I continue to have conversations about when and how we will regather as a full worshiping community on Sunday mornings. So we are especially grateful that you continue to tune in with us from your homes, virtually via Zoom every single week. Thank you. Each month, we connect with a local nonprofit organization to be our plate partner for the month, an organization that is doing good justice work in our community. Our plate partner for the month of June is Giraffe Laugh. Yet again, they're back with us for the second time, and here to share more about their work and their mission in our community is their Director of Philanthropy, Cassandra Wagner. Cassandra, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I am so pleased to be here once again this year. We were so excited to be invited back again. And Reverend Sarah and I and Betty were kind of talking, and we thought that we would talk about the challenging year of COVID and the impact that it had on Giraffe Laugh and the families that we serve. I think last year when I was on, we were just opening back up after a 10-week closure. And because we felt like that was really the responsible thing to do during, the onset of the pandemic. And, the months to follow after the opening were really, really challenging. I mean, not only for the organization, but really primarily for the parents and the children that we support, in that early education realm and the parental support as well. And, we had many parents who were essential workers. Many of them were laid off like so many others and didn't have the opportunity to work. Others were working from home with their children running around, but they didn't feel safe yet to return their children to our care just because of the pandemic and because we knew so little. And I really want to share one story of a mom with you at one of our centers. She actually is a single mom with 6 children, and 2 of her children are with us at Giraffe Laugh, and she's a hairdresser. And she was laid off of work shortly after, about a week before we opened back up. And she didn't have that income coming in. So she took her kiddos out of childcare, because she is on scholarship, but there's still always a very small amount that people have to pay. And even that small amount was a real struggle for her. And she was hoping that her salon was only going to be shut down for a brief amount of time, but it ended up being quite a bit longer than what she anticipated. And she ended up, calling Laura because Laura was checking in on her and, how are things going? And she said, I really need to get Millie and Xander back into school, but I just can't afford anything right now. And Laura, her big heart, she's our director at one of our centers, and she just said, get them in here. We need them here, and we will cover the cost. We will figure this out, and we'll get back on track once you find work. And, Avalon was so incredibly moved by that, that Giraffe Laugh was just like, it doesn't matter if you can't pay anything. Your kids need to be here for their social and emotional development. You need them here for your emotional development or emotional stability so that you can find work. And fortunately, Avalon Salon opened up about a week after the kiddos started back with us, and she got back to work and is doing very, very well right now. But that was just one of the many stories that we had going on at Giraffe Laugh, people who weren't struggling before and all of a sudden were struggling. And those stories were just compounded during the pandemic. And it really, really emphasized the need for having early care and education and having access to it. Nearly 220 childcare centers across the state of Idaho have shut down since September, leaving families high and dry with no place to take their children. Our Giraffe Laugh waiting list is growing exponentially because of the closures of many of the centers, even here locally in our community, and people don't have the access to it. And where Giraffe Laugh really thrived, and I want you all to know, is the impact that you helped make last year and are making again this year. Because without our community, we would have had to close our doors as well. We were fortunate that we are a nonprofit and we're able to fundraise, whereas so many other for-profit childcare centers did not have that capability. And so just so you all know that your impact last year helped us keep our doors open, helped us be able to let Avalon bring her family back and have that care that they needed. And so because of our generous community, we're able to continue fulfilling our mission of providing early care and education to children and families in our community. And we look forward to continuing with all 5 of our programs. On a side note, we did open a part-time preschool last year in the middle of a pandemic. And we celebrated preschool graduation yesterday with 22 Giraffe Laugh graduates who will be heading off to kindergarten. And so much of that is due to people like you in our community. And thank you again for having me today. And we love you. And if you have any questions or want to learn more about it, I'll put my contact info in the chat.
Thank you, Cassandra. Bless you. I can only imagine preschool graduation must be such a delightful experience, and what a celebration.
Was a hoot.
We here, many of us I know in our community have watched in great dismay and frustration at what's been happening in our legislature and the lack of funding and support for early childhood education. And so we are deeply grateful and proud to be your partners and do what we can to support the good work that you're doing for our youngest citizens out there. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, and we'll keep playing.
Hooray, keep playing, that's right. You're at the perfect month.
Yes.
25% of our unpledged plate offering will go to Giraffe Laugh at the end of the month. Thank you so much for being with us, Cassandra. We appreciate it, and for all of the work in all of your centers. As we gather together, even virtually, we take a moment to acknowledge that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land stolen from the Shoshone-Bannock, Shoshone-Paiute, Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai, and Nez Perce tribes, and many other tribes whose names have been lost in history, all of whom inhabited a vast region including much of Idaho before they were rounded up and forced to leave. This land has a long history, long before colonization. We acknowledge that our presence here today is founded upon the exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples. And with this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate our commitment to the ongoing work of dismantling the legacies of settler colonialism, honoring the Indigenous people's connection to this land, and supporting their right to sovereignty. Today and every day, we ground ourselves in love, in the diverse beauty that surrounds us in nature and in people. The flowers of our flower communion, your flowers, are the physical representation of that deep, wild beauty that surrounds us, and that we need that diversity of beauty. Nature reminds us that it is required to create a healthy, thriving ecosystem. Your flowers represent our rainbow faith, beautiful, colorful, and playful, a touchstone to remember we can bring more beauty into the world, and to remember to see the beauty in everyone and everything. And as we celebrate Pride on this Flower Communion Sunday, with beauty, play, and our commitment to collective liberation, we dedicate these flowers to all whose lives have been sacrificed, because they all rest in peace and rest in power, and may we never forget. Let us take a moment to breathe together. Fill your body with breath. Breathe knowing that our breath connects us to one another, to our bodies, to the planet. Our breath offers us an opportunity for stillness, to tune in to our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. This morning, I dedicate the words of our opening poem to our LGBTQ+ community. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger, thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling, thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted, thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted, thou art the deathless dream.
At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in living rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalists, what a mouthful, are also lighting a flaming chalice, reminding us that we are a part of a greater community of faith. As I light the chalice here in our empty sanctuary, you're invited to light your own chalice and then share with us in the chat where you have your flame lit. And if you like, hold up your chalice and show the camera while we watch on our gallery view to see those dancing flames that inspire us to fill our lives with the ideals of love, justice, and truth. With our collective chalices lit in all of our spaces, we offer this call to worship adapted from Rumi. Today, like every day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Follow the scent of a rose. Gaze into the face of a purple iris. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are many ways, 100 ways, to kneel and kiss the ground.
I invite everyone to cozy up for our Time for All Ages together. This month, we are celebrating both play, everything that brings us joy, and pride, a month to celebrate and fortify the fight for our community and rights, for the community and rights of trans, gay, lesbian, and many, many other gay or queer folks. We take the time this month to get very focused on this question. What does it take to create a welcoming space together? Have you ever made a blanket fort or a tree house or some other cool hangout spot with your friends or your siblings? Everybody has something that they want to bring in, something they love, helps them feel comfortable, helps them have fun. If we want to let the people we're playing with enjoy themselves, we have to make room for them to change the space. Sometimes we can have a hard time and it feels like there's not enough room in the blanket fort for both your toys and their lamp and pillows, or whatever else we have. But in order to play together, we have to talk through our disagreements and we have to make some changes. Pride Month began in the late 1960s with LGBTQ people who were fighting hard to make their own welcoming, joyful spaces. They faced unfair and unkind treatment, criminalization, and police violence that kept interrupting their spaces. Having so few places where they could meet or be met with kindness, these communities got angry. They joined together, from picketing and advocating for themselves to sharing resources and care. There is a rich history of LGBTQ folks fighting for their own safety and rights. Today, we're going to hear the story of one welcoming space, Stonewall Inn, which we mark as the beginning to what we now celebrate as Pride Month. This story is from Rob Sanders and illustrator Jamie Kristoff. And I appreciate your patience while I get it loaded up. Today we're looking at not called a virtual book, I don't remember the name for it, but an online book. Going backwards, this is called Stonewall, a building, an uprising, a revolution. Two stable houses side by side. For more than 100 years, we witnessed history. And then came a night when we became part of history. We were built in the 1840s to board the horses of the affluent in New York City, Greenwich Village. Affluent meaning rich and wealthy. Inside our brick walls, horses whinnied and hammers clanged. Outside, passerbys bustled as carriages rumbled on the cobblestone streets. You can almost hear that sound. As time passed, the wealthy residents began to move uptown into a different neighborhood, taking with them their art clubs, libraries, fine hotels, and theaters. Our neighborhood became a mecca for immigrants arriving from all around the world. Visitors made their way to Greenwich Village. Many of them stayed. Greenwich Village was changing. We changed too. The smell of freshly baked bread began to waft out our windows and into the neighborhood. The roar of automobiles placed the rumble of carriages as artists and writers moved in. Contemporary art galleries, experimental theaters, and small restaurants began spraying up around us. The Village was becoming the creative center of New York City. By 1930, almost 100 years after they were built, our two buildings were joined together and we became Bonnie's Stone Wall Restaurant. Celebrities, artisans, tourists, and the local residents lunched at our tables, shoulder to shoulder. Greenwich Village was a place where you could be yourself and where being different was welcomed and accepted. Newness thumped in the heart of Greenwich Village in the 1950s, vibrating our windows. Musicians played on the streets, jazz filled the air. Poets performed in restaurants, artists painted in their studios, the beat movement arrived, and we witnessed it all. Leading up to the 1960s, our neighborhood welcomed gays and lesbians, men who loved men and women who loved women. We were a home for people who were told they didn't fit in or belong. And you can see over on the right, in every image we can see stone wall, the two buildings. We had welcomed all kinds of people before, so we knew what to do. In 1967, we swung open our doors and became the Stonewall Inn. Gay men and women from throughout the city and country came to meet old and new friends, free to be themselves inside our walls. Women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures gathered, chatted, laughed, and danced under our roof. Others were not as accepting. They thought that those gathered within our walls were too different. We heard the whispered voices of those inside. Loving someone like yourself was illegal. Socializing together could get you arrested. Wearing the wrong clothes could land you in jail. Being gay could get you fired or kicked out of your home. Some nights, we heard fists pounding on our doors, felt angry footsteps stomping across our floor, and saw flashes of glaring light as the police arrested some of those inside. After each raid, those who hadn't been arrested left quietly, angrily, disappearing into the darkness. We stood tall and kept opening our doors. People kept coming. But the police raids kept coming too. We couldn't stop them. In the steaming early morning hours of June 28th, 1969, under a nearly full moon, another raid began. "Police," a voice shouted, "we're taking the place." Officers stormed through our doors, lining people up inside, demanding IDs, detaining some, arresting others. And you can see here is a sign that they placed on the building. It says, "This is a raided premises," by the authority of the police department, City of New York City. This time, those not arrested didn't disappear into the night. Instead, they stood defiantly in the street, on the sidewalk under our rusty sign. This time, they weren't quiet. As the ones arrested were led to police cars and patrol wagons, the anger of the growing crowd was lit. "Why don't you do something?" yelled one woman as she was forced into a police car. Immediately, the spark of anger grew into a smoldering resistance. Shouts and screams echoed off of bricks, fists thrust in the air. We saw the faces of the crowd and felt their rage. The Stonewall uprising had begun. The police, shocked by the defiance of the crowd, rushed back in and barricaded themselves inside. Our friends stood outside, trying to force the doors open. Our windows were shattered. Smoke drifted through our rooms. We stood firm. Years of silent anger inflamed the crowd. The police called for help, and soon it arrived. The fires were extinguished. The police came back outside, but the crowd's anger was not extinguished. "Gay power," the protesters shouted. "We want freedom." The police had never seen anything like it before, and neither had we. And it wasn't over. The Stonewall uprising continued off and on for several days and nights. A new day was dawning for the gay rights movement, which is now known as the LGBTQ+ rights movement. The change had begun here, inside our walls, at the Stonewall Inn. On June 28th, 1970, the very next year, our windows looked out on men and women gathering to celebrate the first anniversary of Stonewall uprising. At first, hundreds marched, then thousands of women and men, young and old, teenagers, transgender people, drag queens, veterans, business people, students, people of different colors, religions, and cultures, and their friends and their families joined to parade through the streets of New York City. "Say it loud, say it clear, gay is good, gay is proud," they chanted. And you can see that on some of their signs. Many things are different now. Some things have changed. Even some laws have changed. Now, two men who love each other or two women who love each other can marry. We know, we've seen their happy faces snapping photos outside our door. We've heard their footsteps walking side by side along our floors. We have felt their love. Each year in June, people all over the world celebrate the movement for LGBTQ+ rights, a movement that has come so far, a movement that still has further to go. They celebrate inside and outside our walls. They celebrate freedom. They celebrate equality. It all began one night here at the Stonewall Inn, where two old horse stables became part of history. And here is a photo of the actual exterior. There's that rusty old sign. And we have on our last slide some actual photos from that time, including on the bottom center, we see Marsha P. Johnson and Barbara Deming and Katie Van Doers. I'm not pronouncing things very well today. We see photos of the jukebox, we see signs, protest signs, and we see that sign the police had put on the building. This is a raided premises, which is still framed inside of the Stonewall Inn. Okay. So, my friends, I wonder, have you ever imagined and thought about the history of the building you live in, the building we worship in, or any other historic building that you know about? What can you learn about those places and the history that took place in them? How they welcomed or maybe failed to welcome? How can we make more space for welcoming a full spectrum of gender expression and sexual orientation, including the words we use to describe ourselves and other people, and the support we offer to one another? And lastly, because this is such a beautiful month and a beautiful history, what is one way that you bring joy to the people around you? I invite everyone to join me now in singing our community affirmation, benediction, as we celebrate this community full of multi-generational community full of ever learning, ever growing, ever justice seeking beloveds. Thank you.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
Our reading this morning is Sing for Justice, Sway in Hope, Play with Purpose by Gretchen Haley. Whatever beat is moving through your bones, whatever holy disturbance is rising in your chest, whatever good word you've got for all the good word, for the good of the whole, clap it out, snap it out, and bring it out. Call it out, take to the beat, add to it, change it, make it yours. Gathered here in this sweet beauty, this power, bring all that you are and let it out. Let us not waste this time. Let us make a joyful noise, a more interesting sound, a fuller call, a greater yes. Say it with me, yes. Call out hello and amen and yes.
Yes!
Sing for justice, sway in hope, play with purpose. This time is precious. You are precious, and all of us. This chance is a gift. Each breath is a gift. Being together is a gift. Let's celebrate. Find a new rhythm, write a new song, make a new march for this longing, this dreaming, this discovery, for the urgent call of this day, for courageous love. Let it ring out.
Amen. And yes, and hello. Clap it out, take it to the beat, snap it, bring it out. All of these are ways in which we play with purpose, we play with hope, we play with a vision for our future. I can't stop picturing preschool graduation. I don't remember my kids doing that, but I'm just imagining little bitties with caps and gowns and just all the adorableness and fidgetiness, and just thinking about sitting through one of those preschool graduations, likely with just this big smile on my face or faces of all the parents out there, but because of the great joy and freedom that our young people invite us to express, and how really at that age, even in preschool, places like Giraffe Laugh are teaching our youngest humans how to be citizens of the world, how to create those welcoming spaces in those forts, to make space for other people and the gifts that they have to bring. And it's really disheartening that some people call that indoctrination. That is what it means to be a good human. So as part of our practice of play today, we connect with the practice of generosity with our weekly offering. We give with a sense of purpose. We give with a sense of connecting our values with our own means and resources. And today we give to fuel that play, the beauty of what it means to teach our young people and educate them in the ways of our world so that they will become the next generation with a vision for building the world we dream about. You are the stewards of these gifts. You are the ones who make this possible in our community and in the wider community with that big reach and impact that we have. We thank you in advance for your generosity. Our offering will now be received.
You could be amazing, you could turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug. You can be the outcast or be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. Or you can start speaking up. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way the words do when they settle beneath your skin. Kept on the inside with no sunlight, sometimes the shadow wins. But I wonder what would happen if you say what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. Just wanna see you. I just wanna see you. Just wanna see you.
Wow, that was spectacular, as is this picture. This is from our 2019 coming of age trip to Boston, which you'll get to hear me talk about in a little bit. When my kids were little, back in those preschool years, discovering a new playground was the most exhilarating experience. They would run full speed toward the play structures with total abandon, shrieking and laughing and calling each other's names from the top of the slide or the swing. If you have ever been with little ones to the playground, you know what I'm talking about. And if you ever want to experience a moment or two of pure joy, just head to your nearest playground and watch the little kids play. And if you have young ones in your life, go with them. They own the space, sometimes maybe a little too much, But they let loose in a way that rarely happens in other spaces. They get to be free and uninhibited. That is what play does for us. Play is a spiritual need. To play is to be brave, to be bravely yourself. It is to cultivate hope and let joy lead. It is also deeply vulnerable and powerful. When I was a senior high youth leader back in California, I would watch our youth sneak into the preschool play yard during our overnights and conjure up some of that childhood inhibition as they went down the slide and pumped the swings higher than they ever could before. And after they'd exhausted themselves playing, they would all climb up to the play structure platform and crowd into the platforms and talk in hushed tones and whispered giggles, sharing their lives with one another, more free, more open, more playful than they were when the night began. It is rare these days that I allow myself to play with such abandon. I'm often too caught up in behaving like an adult, whatever that means, too worried about what people will think of me if they catch me spontaneously running through the water fountain at the Grove Plaza, or going down the slide on my belly, or even wildly dancing in the front row of a concert. But I will tell you, and I'm sure those of you out there who have done these things can understand, that when we find those moments where we feel just brave enough to let down our guard and let ourselves play, it feels like nothing else. When was the last time you let yourself play? When you ran squealing into the ocean's waves, when you shed the constraints and expectations of all that holds you back and just let yourself be free. One of the things I love most about Pride Month and all of the celebrations and activism is that at its core it offers that just brave enough space to play with freedom and abandon. Not the I'm pretending to be something kind of play, but the joyful, uninhibited, courageous space for those whose identities are marginalized and oppressed to be freely, authentically who they are in a space where they get to be held at the center instead of at the fringes of society. Our Boston Bounders often try to arrange the trip so that we can be in Boston during Pride Week. So when we went in 2019, we began Pride Weekend with a Pride-themed worship service at Arlington Street UU Church. There we all are pictured there, which was covered in rainbow garland swag and all the Pride flags and life-size cardboard cutouts of RBG in the pulpit, there she is, and also Madonna and Lady Gaga. And in this worship service at the church, one of the oldest Unitarian churches in Boston, we danced and sang and heard beautiful reflections from the pulpit from generations of LGBTQ plus folks sharing their stories. And after it ended, we spilled out into the Boston Common to find our spots to watch the parade. Our youth were beyond excited. They were practically vibrating with anticipation, eagerly collecting rainbow swag, flags, bandanas, bisexual, pansexual, transsexual flags, and beads, all that they could collect. We delighted in the array of marchers, from the brilliantly bedazzled drag queens to the group of motorcyclists that call themselves Dykes on Bikes, to the Pride-themed duck boat, to the mayor's float, all of it cheering and singing and dancing to the music. The joy was palpable. I watched our youth, some of whom identify on that LGBTQ plus continuum. I watched them soak it all up with a mixture of awe and pride and glee. And there were moments like now when I got a little teary-eyed as I watched them because I felt such gratitude as both a minister and a proud parent of a queer youth that they could experience this moment together, that their lives, and the lives of their friends and some of their family members could be so celebrated and affirmed 50 years after the Stonewall Rebellion. And also that they would return home to tell this story about their Boston Pride experience and how they went with their church. The Pride Parade in Boston is massive, and the energy in the city is electric. The LGBTQ+ community is front and center all day long, and it feels magical. We were not able to watch the whole thing. It goes on for hours and hours. And we had a scheduled visit later in the afternoon at King's Chapel, the oldest Unitarian church in Boston, that afternoon. But just as we'd gotten to the church for our tour and began our climb up into their bell tower, we looked out the window and saw the final moments of the parade passing us by. A massive flag, what felt like a city block long with people lining on each side, that was made up of all of the various flags for the LGBTQ+ community, plus a Black Lives Matter flag, was marching by, ending the parade. And the kids all squeezed together at that tiny window in the bell tower to watch the last moments and watch that flag go by, and a hush fell over all of us for a moment. The poor tour guide lost us for a spell because we couldn't turn away. We had to bear witness to this beautiful ending. Pride represents the joyful, playful spirit of a community whose identities and very existence have been devalued, dismissed, and condemned for way too long. And that kind of play can ignite something in us. It helps us better understand our truest, most authentic selves. Play can help release the pressure valve of societal barriers and expectations. Play can help us set aside that voice in our head that tells us we are not worthy or good enough or deserving of love or rights or community. Play helps us to be brave. The Stonewall Inn served as a place for that kind of play, a haven for the LGBTQ community in New York City at a time when being gay or trans was not only illegal, but considered a psychiatric disease listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Even dressing as the opposite sex, or masquerading as it was called, was considered a crime, an arrestable offense, as was serving drinks to gay people at a bar. So Stonewall became a haven. Now, Stonewall was a total dive. Everyone who was alive during that time will tell that story. And it was run by the mafia at the time. But it still contained a community of welcome that was found in few other places. Stonewall became a refuge for the most marginalized, young gays and lesbians, trans people who have long struggled to be accepted in the narrative of pride in our contemporary times. LGBTQ people of color, those who lived on the street because they had no other options. People could dance with whomever they chose, same sex or otherwise. Patrons could dress in whatever way felt good for them. They could be themselves in a world that criminalized and dismissed who they were. And in the story of pride and all of its playful joyfulness, it can be easy and sometimes tempting to get lost in the rainbows and glitter and flowers, in the singing and dancing and parading, in the love is love and love wins and other hashtags. And we can often forget or ignore the violent struggle that preceded and necessitates this kind of celebration. And we can forget those who made the struggle come to life, bringing pride to the forefront. On that fateful night in June of 1969, Marsha P. Johnson was celebrating her 25th birthday at Stonewall. She was a Black trans woman who was an early activist for trans people at the time. And she, along with Sylvia Rivera, became best friends. There they are pictured together, both self-proclaimed drag performers at the time. And they were at the forefront of the days-long rebellion, leading the revolution. It's often touted that one of them threw, quote, the first brick of Stonewall, but in all the research it appears we don't really know, or even if there was a first brick. But their place in the ensuing days, in the uprising and rebellion, and in the leadership of the gay liberation movement at the time cannot be overstated. Sylvia and Marcia founded one of the earliest organizations dedicated to providing support for homeless trans youth in New York City, an organization called STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. My colleague, the Reverend Lane Campbell, writes this: when we say Pride started as a riot led by transgender women of color, we also need to say it was started by sex workers, bisexual people, by a community of people who were fed up with continued arrests and police raids, and police violence, sexual assault, and brutality by police forces in our community and in our spaces. We truly have to celebrate our community's full history in order to fully celebrate Pride. For me, pride and play will always go hand in hand because play is a necessary counterpart to struggle. It is in the play that we sustain the struggle. I recently saw this graphic shared by our representative, John McCrosty, which beautifully captures this essence, reminding ourselves that pride is more than rainbows and parades. Pride is about self-acceptance, euphoria, struggle, pain, hardship, coming out. It is about all the ways in which the LGBTQ+ community find themselves, find their community, and help us all lead the way to a future that truly welcomes all and declares human rights for all people. Play opens up a kind of transcendence and a love that, while born out of struggle, is allowed to blossom. Just like these gorgeous flowers of our flower communion, play is about welcoming beauty in all its forms. Pride reminds us that political resistance can be born out of and fueled by play, by naming and claiming inherent worth and freedom that play often allows us to experience. The story of Pride, while a story born of pain, violence, and ugliness, is also a story of breaking free and coming out, a story of revolution that has changed the world around us and keeps inviting us to change and to lean into the beauty of change. It is a story of play, of finding, creating, and protecting those playful spaces to live our authentic full selves in all of our glorious identities. The kind of play that honors history and hardship, the violence and the pain, and at the same time leads to healing, to possibility, reclaiming the joy of getting to be exactly who you are. May we celebrate, whenever we can, the play in pride and the pride in play. May it be so. Amen. In the way that play balances struggle and pain, part of what allows us to play is knowing that we have a community that will hold us in times of joy and in times of sorrow. So we open up a space each week to share our joys and sorrows together. I'd like to begin by sharing a happy birthday joy to our own Eileen Oldag. Happy birthday, dear one. And a very happy 48th anniversary to Jean and Robert Crum. Please share your joys and sorrows in the chat as we hear this beautiful song, Look to the Rainbow. Happy anniversary, Jim and Sheila. Thank you for all of the joys and sorrows that you shared. You all will appreciate that I am standing here at the pulpit reading them aloud here as Sue is over here at the piano and Patricia's beside me as we're sharing in the joys and sorrows expressed here together. We hold these joys and sorrows of our beloved community alongside the silent prayers we hold close to our hearts, gathering them up with the joys and sorrows of our nation and our world, holding them close, breathing them in, and sending forth love. I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. I have a brief guided meditation for us this morning, a meditation of questions, reflection questions inviting us to think and feel deeply about the nature of play in our own lives. So I invite you to sit comfortably and take a few deep breaths. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. And imagine yourself playing at any age. It could be a younger version of yourself or yourself today. Notice how that feels in your body. Notice how your face responds to the play. What makes something play for you? Is it being free from the burden of producing something? Is creativity involved? Maybe when you lose time, or when you can just be yourself. When has play saved or healed you? When has play led you to experience transcendence? When has play become a form of political resistance? Who in your life keeps you playful? Can you recall a perfect day of play? Spirit of life and love, may we accept the invitations to play more often, to play with the wild abandon of freedom and help create that space for all people, to play with authenticity and welcome transcendence, staying close to our spirit and our heart's longing, welcoming others on the journey toward wholeness, healing, and transformation for ourselves, our communities, and our world. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen. In the ever-evolving Pride movement, I have been most struck and joy-filled by the leadership of the young people, the trans youth and the non-binary youth and the young people even in the midst of our own Unitarian Universalist community, pushing the bounds and ideas of community, of welcome, of our own theology. I know that it takes an extraordinary amount of courage to come out, even in 2021. I can't imagine what the experience must have been like in those early days when secrecy was required so one wouldn't be arrested or evicted. And I am thankful today for this wide rainbow community that throws its arms open and welcomes those who join its ranks, particularly our youth. It makes me so happy to know that there are spaces where they can learn and be embraced and be themselves. Let's enjoy our closing song performed by the New York City Youth Pride Chorus and Tonewall.
I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know, got to let it show.
There's a new me coming out, and I just had to live, and I want to give. I'm completely positive. I think this time around, I'm gonna do it like you never knew it. Oh, I'll make it through. The time has come for me to break out of the shell. I have to shout that I am coming out.
I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show.
I've got to show the world all that I want to be and all my abilities. There's so much more to me. Somehow I'll have to make them just understand. I got it well in hand. Know how I have planned. I'm spreading love. There is no need to fear. And I just feel so good every time I hear.
I'm coming out. Coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming. I'm coming out. Coming. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming. I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Got to let it show. I'm coming.
That was amazing. What a beautiful way to end our Pride Flower Communion service together. Friends, I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. And a reminder, don't forget to play today. This is advice on Flower Communion Sunday, written by our own Patricia Heeb and with a little adaptation from me. Gaze and thrill at a daffodil. Hang out with a hyacinth. Dance like crazy with a wild daisy. Look in the eye of a butterfly. Release the doing, the mind, the need, and find the dandelion's not a weed. Be free. Be you. Beautiful you. Play feeds the soul. The soul feeds play. So try to do some every day. Happy Pride, friends. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.